Hey, it's Julie from StoryADay here, coming to you with an update on StoryADay Day 12 from my perspective. It is the 12th, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, today's prompt is from Monique Cuillier, who decided to give us a prompt to listen to audio and write a story that came from that. Now, the first track that came up for me was one called Martian something or other, and it sounded like a Martian windstorm. And of course, I'm thinking about the movie The Martian, which is one of my favorites. And it's really, really hard to not just want to write, fan fiction for The Martian. But I put a crew into a hab and sat them around listening to a storm, and then set their personalities against each other and had a little bit of bickering and conflict there. But also tried to treat it like a real crew who would have been psychologically examined and wouldn't go off the rails, and make it a little bit realistic. So I'm not sure if it would make a hugely interesting story. But the thing that I enjoyed it. But the thing that I wanted to highlight was that I had just come out of a bunch of meetings. And so all of the people in my story are sort of named. Not all of them. Some of them are just like I was grabbing names from the people I was in a meeting with, and I actually ended up acknowledging, giving us a little hat tip to Andy Weir's The Martian towards the end of the story, and let my characters talk about it. You always have to make a decision in your storytelling of which world your characters are going to be living in. What is the world building situation? Are you writing about a contemporary realistic world like the one we live in, where we had COVID pandemic shut the world down? Or are we just going to blip over that and ignore it? In my world, is the Martian part of the history that these astronauts would have at their disposal to talk about? Yes. In my choice was to make it yes. And one of the characters is actually carrying the book. And so I get to acknowledge that in the book. So everything is material, and you get to make decisions about which pieces you include, which pieces you leave out. In my case, I'm always going to go for the part that amuses me. Even if something amuses me and doesn't serve the story when I reread it, it's probably going to go in the first draft, because I need to be sufficiently entertained to get me to the end of the story. And I can edit later, put on different hat, look at it very differently, look at it very analytically. But the first draft for me is always fairly emotional. And I'm really glad I have this room to myself, because there's a lot of this that goes on. A lot of method acting as I'm thinking about how my characters work. So I'm always quite aware of that when we do writing sprints with, StoryADay, whether I'm actually making faces and things while I write. But I'm not that vain. I don't really care if people are watching. They should be doing their own writing. Anyway, so that was one thing. Everything is material. You get to make strategic choices about what you include and what you exclude, in your world building. And we do world build for everything, whether it is a science fiction fantasy story set in a place that doesn't exist, or whether it's a contemporary, realistic, or historical novel. You always have to build that world and make choices. It's part of, it's the choices about what you put into the setting, about where your characters look, about, what kind of building they're standing next to. These are all world building choices. Another thing that came up for me today was I was looking through the comments at storyaday.org of people who've been writing their stories. And one person was talking about, how they, I think it was Rob, was talking about how he was writing a story that was sort of inspired by the sounds of a peaceful riverbank and children playing. And he was like, should I be concerned that my story ends up with a dead body? And I'm like, no, I think it's actually very, very healthy that we writers are taking those darker thoughts and channeling them into the story writing. Does make me wonder what we'd all be up to if we were channeling our genius in other ways. It's probably good for society that we're writing these stories. Don't you agree? If you're not writing stories, I want you to start, because, I think there's some stuff that would be helpful for you to get out on the page. I don't know. I'm just being silly now, because I've been a long day, and it's been a long 12 days, and I'm still writing, and I hope you're still writing. And yeah, let's go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep writing.